Africa's hidden Christian empire. When people think of Christianity's roots, they imagine Rome, Jerusalem, or Europe. But hidden in Africa's highlands, the kingdom of Aksum rose as one of the earliest Christian empires in the world. Long before Europe embraced Christianity, Ethiopia had already declared it the state religion, minted coins with crosses, and built monumental churches carved out of living rock. Yet this story rarely appears in Western textbooks. The Aksum Empire wasn't just a kingdom, it was a bridge between Africa, the Middle East, and the wider world. The rise of Aksum explained. The Aksum Empire, also spelled Aksum, flourished roughly from the 1st century CE to the 8th century CE. Its territory was in what is now northern Ethiopia and Eritrea, placing it at the crossroads of Africa, the Middle East, and Asia. Because of this location between the Red Sea and the Nile River, Aksum controlled trade routes, both by land and by sea. Think of it as a gateway. Goods moving from Africa could pass into the Mediterranean or the Arabian Peninsula through Aksum. Aksum wasn't just a regional kingdom, it was an international hub of commerce. Exports sent out of Aksum: ivory highly valued in Rome and India, gold used in coins, jewelry and trade, frankincense and myrrh, fragrant resins used in temples, medicine and rituals, exotic animals, lions, elephants, giraffes prized by foreign rulers and arenas, imports brought into Aksum, spices from India and Arabia, silk from China, wine, glass, and luxury goods from Rome and the Mediterranean, ideas and technologies, religions, scripts, architecture styles, etc. This trade made Aksum wealthy, cosmopolitan, and connected to faraway civilizations. Aksum wasn't some unknown kingdom in the shadows, it was famous in the ancient world. Greek and Roman writers often mentioned Aksum, describing it as a powerful state. In fact, around the 3rd–4th century CE, some sources listed Aksum as one of the 4 great powers of the world. Alongside Rome, the Mediterranean superpower Persia, Sassanid Empire in the Middle East, China Han Dynasty, and later empires. This shows how seriously other civilizations respected Aksum's influence. Because of its trade connections, Aksum wasn't just an economic power, it became a cultural crossroads, mixing African, Arabian, and Mediterranean influences. A religious hub. Later, Christianity spread through these same trade networks. A political powerhouse that could project influence across the Red Sea into Arabia. The Aksum Empire rose because of its strategic location and control of global trade routes. It exported Africa's riches, ivory, gold, incense, and imported luxuries and ideas from Rome, India, Arabia, and China. This made Aksum not just wealthy, but internationally recognized as one of the world's great ancient powers. The Queen of Sheba legacy explained. Ethiopian history and identity are deeply tied to the Queen of Sheba, known in Ethiopia as Makeda. According to tradition, she traveled to Jerusalem, where she met King Solomon of Israel, the wise biblical king. Their union produced a son named Mentelik. Mentelik, the first, is said to be the first emperor of Ethiopia. This claim means Ethiopia's royal dynasty is directly connected to the Bible, giving its rulers a divine and ancient legitimacy. This story is preserved in Ethiopia's sacred text, called the Kebra Nagast, the Glory of Kings, written in the 14th century, drawing from much older oral traditions. The text links Ethiopia's kings to King Solomon and the House of David, frames Ethiopia not as a peripheral African kingdom, but as a central player in God's plan, justifies the authority of Ethiopian emperors as being chosen by God. In other words, the Kebra Nagast gave Ethiopian rulers a biblical pedigree that no other Christian kingdom outside Israel could claim. One of the most famous parts of Ethiopian tradition is the belief that Menelik I brought the Ark of the Covenant from Jerusalem to Ethiopia. The Ark of the Covenant, according to the Bible, was a sacred chest holding the stone tablets of the 10 Commandments. Ethiopians believe the Ark was placed in Aksum's Church of Our Lady Mary of Zion, where it is still said to be kept today. The church claims that only one guardian monk is allowed to see the ark, and no outsider has verified it, but this tradition remains powerful. This legacy ties Ethiopia directly into the biblical story of Israel and Solomon. For Ethiopians, it's not just legend, it's part of their national identity and spiritual heritage. Even today, the Ark claim attracts pilgrims, scholars, and mystics who are fascinated by Ethiopia's biblical connection. The Queen of Sheba story links Ethiopia's emperors to Solomon and the Bible, giving them divine legitimacy. Through the Kebra-Nagast, Ethiopia claimed not just to be an ancient African empire, but a chosen kingdom of God, and the belief that the Ark of the Covenant rests in Aksum keeps this legacy alive and mysterious even today. Aksum's monumental architecture, one of Aksum's most impressive legacies, is its massive stone obelisks, or stelae. Some stand over 20 meters tall, carved from single pieces of granite. These monuments, decorated with windows and doors, symbolized eternal palaces for kings in the afterlife. Long before Gothic cathedrals or European castles, Aksumites were engineering these towering works of stone. The largest, now fallen, would have been nearly 33 meters tall, one of the greatest monoliths ever attempted by human hands. The conversion to Christianity in the 4th century CE, the Aksumite Empire in present-day Ethiopia and Eritrea became one of the first nations in the world to officially adopt Christianity. King Hosanna was the ruler who made Christianity the state religion of Aksum. This was around the same time, or even before the Roman Empire, under Constantine officially embraced Christianity. According to Ethiopian tradition, a Syrian Christian named Frumentius was shipwrecked near the Red Sea and ended up in Aksum. He gained influence at the royal court, educated young Hosanna, and introduced him to Christianity. Later, Frumentius became the first bishop of Aksum, known as Abba Salama, Father of Peace, and guided the king and court in their conversion. Coins are one of the best proofs of this transformation. Before conversion, Hosanna's early coins had pagan religious symbols, like the sun disk and crescent moon. After conversion, his later coins switched to the Christian cross, showing the empire's new faith and spreading it across trade networks. Aksum became a Christian stronghold in Africa, centuries before most of Europe. This gave Ethiopia one of the oldest continuous Christian traditions in the world, which still survives today in the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. Ethiopia and the Bible in the book of Acts, Acts 8:26-40. There's a story of an Ethiopian eunuch, a royal official, treasurer to the Queen of Ethiopia. While traveling, he was reading the Hebrew scriptures, and the apostle Philip explained the gospel of Jesus to him. The Ethiopian believed and was baptized on the spot, making him one of the first recorded African Christians in history. This shows that Ethiopia was connected to Christianity right from the very beginning of the church. The GS Bible, Christianity in Ethiopia developed in its own ancient language. The GS Bible is one of the earliest and most complete biblical canons that survive. This means Ethiopia didn't just adopt Christianity, but actually preserved it in written form earlier than many European nations. Unique canon books Europe rejected, while the European Church standardized the Bible much later, deciding which books to include or exclude. The Ethiopian Church kept more ancient texts. Example, the Book of Enoch, a Jewish text that speaks about angels, demons, and visions of heaven. It disappeared from Western Bibles but was preserved in Ethiopia. This shows that Ethiopian Christianity is closer to the earliest traditions, not the edited-down version that Europe later promoted. Ethiopia's Christianity is not a copy of European Christianity. It is older, independent, and deeply African, rooted in both the Bible and ancient Ethiopian culture. It highlights Africa's central role in shaping global Christianity. The rock-hewn churches of Lalibela, explained in the town of Lalibela, northern Ethiopia. There are 11 medieval churches carved directly into solid rock. This happened in the 12th–13th centuries, under King Lalibela of the Zagwa dynasty, instead of being built from stone blocks. These churches were hewn down into the ground from a single piece of rock, like sculpting a cathedral out of a mountain. The most famous is the Church of St. George Beit Georgis, shaped like a perfect cross when seen from above. The churches have pillars, windows, passageways, and intricate carvings, all cut by hand. Many of them are connected by underground tunnels and trenches, symbolizing a new Jerusalem in Africa. Although built centuries after the Aksumite Empire's peak, these churches show how Christianity remained strong in Ethiopia. They are physical proof that Ethiopian Christianity wasn't just about adopting a foreign religion. It flourished independently with its own African identity. Even today, Lalibela is not a museum but a living holy site. Pilgrims still travel there, and priests chant Jesus hymns that have been passed down for over 800 years, unchanged in language or style. The rock-hewn churches are not only an architectural wonder, sometimes called the eighth wonder of the world, but they also show Ethiopia's unique role in preserving one of the world's oldest Christian traditions. Trade, wealth, and diplomacy explained. When Aksum became Christian in the 4th century, it didn't cut itself off from the world. Instead, its new identity gave it closer ties to other Christian powers, especially the Roman and Byzantine empires. Aksumite kings exchanged letters and envoys with the Roman emperors and later with Byzantium, Eastern Roman Empire. This made Ethiopia a recognized Christian kingdom on the world stage, not just a regional African power. Aksum wasn't limited to Africa. Its influence stretched into southern Arabia, Yemen, where it sometimes even ruled territory. This made Ethiopia a key player in Red Sea politics and trade, controlling important trade routes linking Africa, the Middle East, and Asia. Ethiopian traders carried Christianity into Arabia centuries before the rise of Islam in the 7th century. This positioned Ethiopia as a spiritual lighthouse, spreading Christian traditions beyond Africa. For centuries, Ethiopia was seen as a Christian beacon, respected by rulers in the Middle East and Europe. Medieval Europeans even told legends about a mysterious, powerful Christian king in Africa, known as Prester John, inspired in part by Ethiopia's reputation. Ethiopia wasn't isolated or weak. It was a wealthy, diplomatic, and spiritual power. Its Christian identity helped it connect with the wider world, while still keeping its African roots. With the rise of Islam in the 7th century, the world around Aksum shifted dramatically, yet Ethiopia and Islam share a unique bond. When the first Muslims fled persecution in Mecca, they sought refuge in Aksum. The Christian king, known as the Negus, granted them asylum, making Ethiopia the first safe haven for Islam. This act created a relationship of respect, though later centuries brought tensions as Islamic powers grew around the Red Sea and cut off Aksum's trade routes. By the 8th century, Aksum faced challenges. Deforestation, soil exhaustion, and shifting trade routes weakened its economy. With the rise of Islamic ports, Aksum lost its dominance of Red Sea trade. The empire retreated into the Ethiopian highlands, preserving its Christian faith, but losing its status as a global power. Yet, unlike many ancient kingdoms, Ethiopia's culture never vanished. It endured, transforming into later dynasties that still claimed descent from Aksumite kings. Ethiopia remained proudly Christian through centuries of isolation, even resisting European colonization. Its churches, manuscripts, and oral traditions preserved forms of Christianity far older than much of Europe's. The colorful processions of Timkat, the Ethiopian Epiphany, still reenact the baptism of Christ, with chants in Jesus and replicas of the Ark of the Covenant. Ethiopia's Christian heritage is not a copy of Europe's. It is an independent African expression of faith, with roots deeper than most realize. Why is Aksum rarely taught in schools? Because it challenges the Eurocentric idea that Christianity was Europe's gift to Africa. In truth, Africa shaped Christianity as much as Christianity shaped Africa. By reclaiming Aksum's story, we restored Ethiopia to its rightful place in world history, not as a side note, but as one of the great civilizations that carried faith, culture, and power into the modern age. The passage is emphasizing Ethiopia's unique role in world religion, particularly through the Aksum Empire 1st 10th century CE. Here's what each part means. Often, history books portray Africa as if it only received religion from outsiders. Christianity from Europe, Islam from Arabs. But Ethiopia's case shows the opposite. Africans actively shaped religion. Ethiopia didn't just accept Christianity blindly, it developed its own form, theology, and practices. It became a protector of faith, keeping ancient traditions alive when they disappeared elsewhere. Christianity was adopted in Aksum around the 4th century under King Azana. Unlike Europe, Ethiopia kept its independent church, the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church, with its own customs, music, art, and holy books. Their Christianity was African in identity, not a copy of Roman or Byzantine traditions. Refers to masterpieces like the rock-hewn churches of Lalibela, 12th–13th century, carved entirely from stone. These were not just places of worship, but symbols of Ethiopian genius and devotion. Ethiopia kept ancient religious texts that disappeared elsewhere, such as the Book of Enoch and the Book of Jubilees, which are not found in most versions of the Bible today. Their GS manuscripts are among the oldest biblical texts in the world. Ethiopian Christianity has endured for over 1,600 years. Despite invasions, Islamic expansion, colonization attempts, and modern pressures. Today, millions of Ethiopians still practice this faith, with traditions directly tied to the Aksumite Empire. Ethiopia's role in global religious history is often hidden or minimized in Western narratives, but in reality, Ethiopia stands as a cradle of faith, showing Africa's spiritual strength, cultural independence, and intellectual creativity. Ethiopia didn't just adopt Christianity, it made it its own, preserved sacred texts, built stunning monuments, and kept its faith alive for centuries, making it one of the world's most important spiritual centers.